you for joining me today, Hawkeye, on Maple Leafs Man Advantage. And today I'm going to talk about something that has nothing to do with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Sort of. It definitely has to do with hockey, um, but it is the other hockey league that was created, the World Hockey Association. So I'm going to talk about that today. And before I do, certainly if you like the video, hit the thumbs up down there. Subscribe. I certainly have other videos about the Toronto Maple Leafs primarily, but certainly about hockey coming through the years as well. And if you want to comment on something, go ahead. I'm going to be talking about something way before my time. I never watched this league ever. I wasn't even born when it was created and through most of its existence. So there you have it. So it was back on September the 13th, 1971, the World Hockey Association, or the WHA, was founded. It was founded by Dennis Murphy and Gary Davidson. They were the two to do so. I found out as well, they had also founded America Basketball Association as well back in 1967, a few years prior to this. So yeah, this is I'm going to call it the Renegade League to compete against the NHL back in the 70s. In the end, I definitely look at this league as a big help, a huge helping hand in increasing players' salaries. I also personally think that some of the owners and GMs within the WHA, they went too far in handing out the green, the moolah. They were very aggressive in doing so, but I could see why. They want to get the best players they can get a hold of, put them in this league, and have them compete against the NHL and try and win or get big money. Um, to put butts in seats, people watch it, perhaps on TV. I assume it must have been on TV somewhere to try and gain those dollars. Now, when the league started, there was actually 67 NHL players jumped from the NHL and came over to this new league, the WHA. Now, when the WHA started, the average salary of an NHL player was $25,000 a year. Not too bad. This would have been 1971 or 72. $25,000 a year was a very good salary back then. No comparison to what they're making. Or it was Bobby Hall who signed a 10-year deal with the WHA worth $2.7 million at the time. You do the math, and there you go. That's what he was making a year. Um, and it gave the WHA credibility to have a star player such as Bobby Hall playing in this league. He was the league's biggest star, big time. Um, in the end, Bobby, he played 411 WHA games, and he put up some incredible numbers in that league. He scored 303 goals with 335 assists for 636 points. He was second only to Mark Tardif in the WHA for numbers, for the points. Just second him, and I think Tardif played with the Quebec Nordique as well. And now in the NHL, Bobby, he scored 610 goals. I do believe you would need to add, in my opinion, 200 on top of that if Bobby stayed in the NHL, never went to the WHA at all. I think you need to do that. That's less than 29 goals a season for 7 years. He scored 50 goals in his final season in the NHL before going to the WHA. If he stayed in the NHL, I think he would likely be in fourth place behind Wayne Gretzky, Alexander Ovechkin, who is just behind Gretzky right now, and another guy I'm going to mention in a moment as well. But because he went to the WHA, he's still high on this list. He's ranked at number 18 all time. Um, but just to add to that as well, the only player above him in this list, the top 17 above him, who played less games than him was Mario Lemieux, who was one of the best players I ever seen play the game. Man, he had skill. Um, so there you go. That was Bobby Hull going to the WHA. That was a big boost for that league. Now there were also other big names coming over to the league as well. And I'm going to mention some that were Leafs coming over. So there was Bernie Perron, Dave Keon, Paul Henderson, Frank Mahovlich, Rick Lee. That's just some that came over. There was also youngsters before they came to the NHL that played there, like Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier, Rick Vaive. They all started in the WHA. Now, from the perspective of the Leafs, you would have Harold Ballard. Well, I apologize. The owner of the Leafs. He did not take this league seriously, or was not willing to take them seriously, or didn't want to take them seriously. Um, and that is exactly why he lost so many players to this league. He wasn't willing to uh, pony up, give these players those extra dollars to keep them in Toronto. Um, he thought this league wasn't going to last, and you're going to be blackballed out of the league because you went to this other WHA league. That's not exactly what happened to all of these players, but from what I've read in books and read online, that's kind of the frame of thought Harold Ballard had, and unfortunately, it didn't do anything to help the Toronto Maple Leafs. I have also heard, though, from the likes of Jim McKinney that Ballard didn't really have a overflowing chest full of cash that he could reach into and just throw money on the table for all these guys as well. Um, so that also didn't help the Leafs. That would not be their problem now, but they can't quite do that in the market that is in hockey now, what with the salary cap. Um, but it was a combination of things. It didn't help Toronto through the 70s really put out the best teams that they could, that being a couple of them there. Now, I'm going to talk about that other guy, the other player that came to the WHA that was huge, and that was Gordie Howe. I'm sure I knew this, but I totally forgot it. When looking this up, I found out or was reintroduced to the fact that he had retired at the point, and had done so after the 1970-71 season. And we're now going into the 1972-73 season at this point. So he would return following this season, so the 1973-74 season, to play for the Houston Aeros. While in the WHA, he played 419 games. He scored 174 goals with 334 assists for 508 points. Um, he was also in his late 40s doing this, in the early 50s. Incredible. Um, Incredible player this guy was. One of a kind, really. Now, no, I don't think, like Bobby Hull, you could just translate that over to the NHL and say he would do the same thing. But when looking at Gordie Howe now, he did score 23 goals and get 52 points in 63 games in his final season in 1970-71, and he was 42 years old. He wasn't a young man. Um, I I really do think Howe could score just under 22 goals a season in the NHL during his time he played in the WHA. I think he could do that. Um, he would certainly be healthy or playing more games than they did in 1970-71. for 4 of those 6 seasons, he would have played more games. When coming back, or he just, came back to Detroit or came back to the NHL, I really think he would be number one in goals to this day. He would be what Gretzky had retired with by about 40 goals or so. Would that have kept Gretzky in the game? Maybe, but Gretzky was scored 9 goals in his final season. So is Gretzky going to play another 4 years to work towards beating Howe's record? I don't think so. I think Gretzky, I don't think so. I think he would have retired when he did. But I think Howe would be the number one goal scorer if he just stayed in the NHL. Howe's final season was in 1979-80 for the Hartford Whalers in the NHL. So, and that was Gretzky's first season in the NHL. So it's interesting that there is like, oh, Howe and Gretzky finally together. Yeah, well, they were the year before too in the WHA. So, yeah, everything isn't always the NHL. There's this other league now. Now, at the same time, is it the same quality? Perhaps not. But boy, it's getting close. You got some NHL players in that league with some NHL goalies like Bernie Perron, Jerry Cheevers. So in the inaugural season, the WHA would play with the NHL. They didn't play 78 games. And there's 12 different teams in this league now. I'm going to try and quickly skim over each of these teams. So the divisions, they were exactly the same as they were in the NHL. You have the East and you got the West. Don't like the naming. WHA, they have no history, so I give them a pass for that. So starting at the bottom of the East, we have the New York Raiders, coached by Camille Henry. Ron Howard led the way. He was an ex-Leaf, I think. He scored 51 goals and got 118 points. Also on this team was Bobby Sheehan and Kent Douglas. We also have the Quebec Nordique, coached by Maurice Filion. Maurice Rocket Richard even coached these guys for a couple of games. And as the story goes, I think he found out, I don't really like coaching that much, so he stopped doing it. J.C. Tremblay led the league, and this team was 75 assists. That one of the three goalies for these guys was Richard Brodeur. This was his rookie season and was 20 years of age. After the WHA folded, he would go into the NHL, and certainly he would be mostly remembered for playing with the Vancouver Canucks. Now, I thought I learned and forgot and then thought and then relearned. No, he is not Martin Brodeur's father, and he has no relation to Marty Brodeur either. So, like, there's no relation between the two, but he's a goalie as well. Then there is the Ottawa Nationals, coached by ex-Leaf Billy Harris. Wayne Coleman, another ex-Leaf, led the squad with 42 goals and 91 points. We also have Yves Sabathia, another Leaf, who played in Toronto the past 2 seasons. He grabbed 26 goals. And in that one option they had was Les Binkley from Owen Sound, Ontario, who had played with the Pittsburgh Penguins for 5 seasons after the original expansion. So now he's in the WHA as well. Here we go. Now we got the Philadelphia Blazers, coached by Phil Watson. Had Andre Lacroix with 50 goals and leading the WHA with 124 points. Danny Lawson also led the WHA. He had 61 goals. And also on the team was John McKenzie, who had 2 Stanley Cups when he played with the Boston Bruins. Oh boy, and now in net. Sad times. This is where Bernie Perron went when he left Toronto and went to the WHA. And he led the WHA with 33 wins. He was getting a lot of playing time here with the Philadelphia Blazers in this league. Then we have the Cleveland Crusaders, coached by Bill Needham. Gary Jarrett led the team. He had 40 goals. And in net was Jerry Cheevers, who led the WHA with his 2.84 goals against average and 5 shutouts. He also had 32 wins, so just one less than Bernie there in Philadelphia. And then rounding out the East was the New England Whalers. There's a few ex-Leafs on this team. They went on to win the AFCO Cup in the first season of the WHA. Tom Webster scored 53 goals and had 103 points. Terry Caffrey, also for this club, he had 100 points as well. But also playing for them, all ex-Leafs, Jim Doherty, Brett Selby, Brad Selwood, Rick Lee, and in net, Al Smith. So there you go. And they went on to win the Avco Cup this season. So now we're going to jump over to the West. And in the bottom there, we got the Chicago Cougars, coached by another ex-Leaf, Marcel Pronovo. He even won a cup in Toronto. Bob Sikinski led the team with 88 points. And Rosie Paymont, brother of Wolf, he had 33 goals. Next up is the Alberta Oilers, before they became the Edmonton Oilers. They were coached by Ray Kinasuich, I think is how you pronounce that name. Jim Harrison, I know, another ex-Leaf, led the team with 37 goals and 86 points. So now we got the Minnesota Fighting Saints, first coached by Glenn Songmore and then by Harry Neal. He would become known for coaching and a GM as well with the Vancouver Canucks. Richard Brodeur was his goalie there, I believe, and then certainly I remember him. To me, I'm a little bit younger. I definitely remember him on Hockey Night in Canada with doing Toronto games. But for the Saints, it was Wayne Conley, a team of 40 goals and 70 points. Then we have the Los Angeles Sharks, coached by Terry Slater. This is interesting to me. I guess we have the Los Angeles Sharks. Later in the NHL, we're going to get a team in San Jose called the San Jose Sharks. I don't know if there's any connection between the two. Let me know out there if anybody knows. There must be. For this team, it was Gary Veneruso led the squad with 43 goals and 73 points. And Houston Aeros were next up there. They were coached by Bill Dineen. Lavoisier led the team with 36 goals and 96 points. And then finally in the West, we have the Winnipeg Jets, coached and starring Bobby Hull. Kind of like Reggie Dunlop of Slapshot here. He's the coach and a player at the same time. Yeah, that wasn't going on in the NHL. That's how big of a start Bobby was, I guess. But Bobby ended up with 51 goals, and he led the team with 103 points. That tied him with Norm Bowden, who had 103 points as well. He had 38 goals, as well as Christian Bordelot had 47 goals and 101 points. They could put the puck in the net here in Winnipeg. And a couple of goalies the Jets used were Joe Daly and Ernie Wakely, who had both played in the NHL as well. So there you go. As you can see, there's NHL caliber players here in this new league. And the WHA is here for a little while. They're here for 7 seasons. What happens at some point, I will certainly get to that, but before. And some of these teams move. Some of these teams fold. Like there's, I remember there's the Toronto Toros show up. They weren't there initially. The Birmingham Bulls, they weren't here initially, excuse me. So there's a lot of movement going on in this league. And the Leafs have lost some players already, right when the league starts up. And I've mentioned some of the other ones. They won't be the last either. And that is really sad and unfortunate. But leagues couldn't hold on to these players and lost them to this league. But I definitely look at this league as being very helpful towards the players in getting the mean green, getting their salaries raised up to perhaps maybe where it should have been. But anyways, that's it. That's the WHA, the World Hockey Association. And my next video, I'll definitely get back into the NHL and talk about, I think it's some drafts coming up for 1972. We'll get in that. So there you go. And until next time, go Leafs go.